So Freeport is that area.
We ready?
Hang on just a second.
Additional area.
Oh. We've got our
What
official
baseline
record.
elevation is.
Okay.
Sorry.
Additional area
Come on, let's
above baseline elevation. So in other words, you've got baseline elevation. So it's Freeport equals design flood. That's what it's decided at. We require 1 foot Freeport. Which is an additional elevation.
So what they're asking is just that scanning retail.
It's one of those houses that were
Yeah, explain it better.
not car long.
One yes, one no.
Oh, there's two, okay.
Yeah, but we require that additional 1 foot from what FEMA says is the base flood. They only require the typically this high.
Right.
We ask it be 1 foot higher than that.
Gotcha.
Thank you. All right, we're good then.
You ready? All right. It's Wednesday, June 7th, 1:30 p.m. I've called the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order.
You mean 10:30?
What's
You
it?
said 1:30. It's 10:30.
10:30. Close. God, I wish it was 1:30. Okay, 10:30. Thanks for the correction. All right. The first item is the public hearing. Board of Adjustment Appeal will consider a public hearing on the following. Please limit any comments to 3 minutes or less. There is no discussion. First item is an unsafe substandard structure, including variance request filed by the property owners. Property location is 2016 on the Beach Road. We have somebody who speaks on that.
Morning,
Morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Hal George. I represent the Beach Lodge, which has filed this application. I don't know if you guys got it or not, but I filed a motion for stay for abatement. I sent copies of it to the city secretary and to staff and to this guy over here.
That's me with the time.
They have it.
You know,
they do have it.
in front of them.
They do have it.
The last time I was in this building, not only was I the only guy in the room with a coat and tie, I was the only person in the room that had socks on. And I will tell you that I don't have socks now, and I live. Anyway, the motion to stay is real simple. Not only did they send the notices of unsafe building to my client, they filed multiple criminal charges in municipal court. At the end of the motion, you will see an email from the municipal court to me asking if I represented Beach Lodge on the municipal court cases. I do not. Fred Jimenez represents them. But the plain fact of the matter is that this is a civil proceeding. The municipal court cases are a criminal proceeding. We all know that we have a right to remain silent. We have a right not to incriminate ourselves. For my client to come up here and give you any testimony about his unsafe structures, he may incriminate himself in a criminal case, and that guy right there is going to hold it against him. He's going to bring it up to the municipal court judge. I have cited to you sufficient authority, sufficient case law that holds that a stay or an abatement in a civil proceeding is appropriate when there is a criminal case pending. There are multiple criminal cases pending. They have filed the cases. My client has a right not to incriminate himself. So we ask you to put a stay on these proceedings until the criminal proceedings have ended. Having said that, just by, and I'm not gonna have my client testify because I'm not gonna have him come up here and maybe incriminate himself. All the structures that they're complaining about are vacant. As soon as my client got notice from the city, they're vacant. He is agreeable, or my client is agreeable to moving all the structures. We need until December to do that. There are two structures that we don't believe we need to move. The first one is one where the electric company made us move the meter. When the inspector came out, we got a permit for the electrical installation. That passed inspection by the city and by AEP. The city is now saying, oh, you didn't get a permit for the wall. The inspector at the time told my client, it's under $1,500, you don't need a permit. We respectfully say, we don't.
May I ask you something, Hal? Are you relating something that your client told you and you're relating that something to us?
I don't know.
It sounds like it, because you have no actual physical knowledge of anything except that which has been imparted to you by your client. And now you're telling us about a conversation your client had with some inspector. So do you really want to do that? Is that incriminating your client? You're doing that yourself? I mean, I'm just
The other
telling you
thing-
that's.
The other issue is, I only got 3 minutes, Mike.
I really
I only have my 3 minutes. The other is a small shed that the city says is 12 by 12. It has been measured. It's 10 by 9 feet 6 inches. It's 96 square feet. You gotta have a permit if it's 110 feet. This is under that, so it doesn't need one. So we would respectfully request that you stay these proceedings until the criminal proceedings are ended. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll bring that item up in regular session.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Got anything else, Mike?
Well, no, I'm
Okay,
not in the public hearing portion.
okay, all right. Okay, the next item is a variance request. 23-000936. Property location 206 Bentgrass. Is anybody?
Morning, guys. Apologize for not being better prepared. I'm Marcus Gonzalez with Arborgast Homes. I was asked to show up kind of last minute in reference to the variance that we requested for 206 Bentgrass. Basically, long story short, our garage is a couple inches under the required elevation for the freeboard, for us to have to add the flood vents in the house. And there's not a location for us to add the flood vents in them. Basically, all three sides of the garage itself have a higher elevation for the finished elevation of 10 foot. And the only opening to add a flood vent would be in the garage door. Now, us adding flood vents to the garage door itself would then compromise the integrity of the door and would not meet windstorm rating after that. So that's,
All right. Thank you, sir.
thank you, sir.
All right. Next item in the public hearing is variance request 23-000923. Project 108 Darling Lane. Everybody here to speak on that issue? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Going to the regular agenda. Any citizen comment from the audience? Hearing none. So take up a regular meeting. First item, discussion, take appropriate action on the minutes of Wednesday, May 10th, 2023 Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting. Hope everybody's had a chance to review those very short minutes.
They were very short.
Do we have any additions, corrections? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we accept.
Motion by Mallory, need a second?
Second.
Second. David, All those. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Next item, consider to take appropriate action on unsafe substandard structure. Including variance requests filed by the property owner, request by Choke Canyon Inc. DBA Beach Lodge, property location 2016 on the beach road. Okay, I'll open this item.
Yeah, let me
Rick,
just give you the
yeah.
big overview and then Mike's here to do the kind of the heavy lifting. This is a little complicated, but on or around the first part of the year, February, we identified that multiple structures had over the course of time, as our research indicated, had been placed on a property. We couldn't identify any permits had been pulled. The structures, some were being habitated, connected to water and sewer. Some structures were utilitarian in purpose, none of which though had obtained any proper permits. And I think it was over the course, you have the timelines, but over the course of about 6 or 7 years, these things had systematically applied. And we have a photographic chronological order that you'll see them start to appear in the aerial views, and then Carla put together a timeline. So we began entering citations February of 2022 for multiple violations. First off, the lack of building permits, but then also I think all, if not most of the structures fall within the 1,000-foot dune protection line. And again, as you guys know, anything done within that 1,000-foot falls under our coastal management plan that the GLO has delegated us to for enforcement through our coastal management plan, the Natural Resource Act, which prohibits any activity in the dunes without proper approvals through both planning and zoning and city council. So in addition to the lack of permits on these structures, it started to appear the lack of permits for the electrical and the utility connections. There was also the violations for these things being in the dune protection area. Those are what the citations have been issued for. And I think there was a reference to multiple citations, as most of you know, but just for the record, I'll cite that the citations can be issued for every day that the alleged violation exists. So every day that violation continues, we can issue a separate citation. We did not do that. We did issue multiple citations for a period of time, and I think over the course of a couple of weeks, but certainly nowhere near. We could be continuing to issue citations as of today, but we've chosen not to do that. And subsequent, the application for a variance was filed, which is what brings us here today. And as you can see, there's several requests that they be grandfathered, they be allowed, and there's some other things. So I think with that, you did receive the stay. I think you had Mr. George presented that they had requested that. Mike, I think, can probably address that. But I did want you guys to have a copy of that. So that's where we are, and I'll kind of let Mike, if you're all right with kind of addressing it. The meeting is being recorded, so the record will be preserved, but Mike can kind of address some of the comments that you guys heard earlier.
Well, I assume that Hal's up there to ask questions.
okay.
Is that why you have approached the?
No,
Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, as staff has indicated to you, there are criminal charges pending against my client for the very same issue that is before you. And I request that at this time that you consider and issue a ruling on our motion to stay or to abate the proceedings pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings.
Okay, there are two ways of addressing this. One is this entire disagreement is going to, at some point in time, probably be in a district court in Nueces County. It will probably not be settled here. So it's going to be there, and he can make the same arguments there that he is making here. Additionally, and perhaps more importantly for you, I do not believe that the city has any intention to, any desire to hear testimony from the defendants or any reason to, because everything that is going to be presented to you could be presented by them. So he's afraid to call his clients to the stand to defend themselves in this case. The city has no need for his testimony to prove either the civil case before you or in a district court of Nueces County or in a criminal court. None, absolutely. So what we would do is just tell him today that we will not use any of the statements made by your clients in this proceeding under oath today in the criminal cases that are now pending. So there will be no damage done to your clients if they can testify in the civil case, and in the criminal case, no one can use the testimony they've given today.
Said fat old man up there.
So in conclusion, I just suggest that you deny the motion to delay everything. It's been delayed enough. It's been months and months trying to work out something with these people. It hasn't worked. So I suggest that you deny that motion and continue to hear the merits of this claim and their defenses.
Well, I can tell you, we came real close to settling the case. My clients are willing to talk to them about it. We reached an impasse, and I think I indicated to you what that impasse is. I can't speculate on the future as to what my client is going to do, whether this case is going to be in district court or not. I can't speculate on that. That's something that Mr. Morris has no idea about. He's just guessing. The plain facts are that we are entitled under Texas law to a stay of this proceeding until the criminal proceedings are concluded. I've cited you the Texas cases in point, as well as some out-of-state cases, all holding the same thing. You can't go forward under Texas law, and we'd ask you to rule on the motion to stay.
And we disagree vehemently. If there is no expectation of your client's testimony today being used in any criminal proceeding, then there is absolutely no reason to delay this matter any further. So why? And yes, we had reached an agreement, and that was my hope and expectation. But at the end, it became clear that they wanted to pursue the issues concerning, I believe it's a construction of some wall that they did again without any permit, and then an electrical meter attached to that wall. And is there something else that was at issue that precluded your clients from signing and agreeing to that order? There's something else.
The small shed that doesn't require a permit.
Small shed that doesn't require a permit. And now I don't know the technicalities. Carla may be able to speak to that. If it doesn't require a permit, then that's fine.
The bigger issue, Mike, in that is
But-
that, as I mentioned, is that all of these structures fall within the dune protection area. It's a serious violation of the Dune
Well,
Protection
that's
Act
true. And
and our coastal management plan. So building permit aside, any activity in that 1,000-foot
it overrides everything. And
and actually carries a dual punitive possibility with the general land
I
office.
think the Dune Protection Act's been in effect for 40 years thereabouts. And whenever anybody wants to do anything within that dune protected area, you're going to have to get a permit. Technically, it's from the state. The city is somewhat of an agent of the state with respect to the issuance of those permits, but the state always has the overriding authority to approve or disapprove.
Again, your staff told you about double penalties. I can't rely on anything. Just, you can say anything you want to. And Mr. Morris is an ethical lawyer. I know that. But I trust him to represent his client well. But I don't know that he's not going to use anything that my client comes up here and says to you in the criminal thing. So
You can't have any better assurance of that than the fact that I'm willing to state it on the record. This proceeding is recorded. And if the board agrees, then the board is telling you, we recognize that the state, i.e. the city, is not going to use these statements that they may make in front of this board in any of these criminal citations. I say criminal citations, these are all Class C misdemeanors in the municipal court. Punishable by fine each day. And it's not uncommon for things like this to be filed in that way. If someone puts something in the dune protected area, as is the case here, and does not go and get a permit, when I believe they fully knew they had to get permits, they had in the past, and only in the last 10 years, is it? They've stopped. Even though they go ahead and place these shacks, these hovels, these unsafe structures, I'm not going to call them buildings because they're shacks. They should not have ever been inhabited, but they were. They were used by these people to house their employees because it saved them a bunch of money. The employees may not be able to afford the rent, so they're out there inhabiting these crummy little dangerous shacks. Sewer and water of which is provided by your water district. And guess what? The water district did not know that these things were being built and that the hookups were being made. So we were trying to settle something without having to go into all that detail, but it hadn't been possible because of the recalcitrance of these defendants. We're ready to go forward. And
Mr.
build
Chairman,
this
members of the commission. All that inflammatory language that you just heard is exactly the kind of stuff that my client needs to rebut, but he cannot because he doesn't want to give up his Fifth Amendment rights. That's why we're entitled to the stay. The city has presented absolutely no legal authority to rebut the case law.
Say that again.
I'm sorry?
The city has no legal authority?
They have not given
He
you
says-
any case law
Yeah, he's
saying,
claiming we haven't rebutted it by citing you case law. I got this thing yesterday afternoon or night at 8 p.m. And that's how much time I've had to look at the law, which is absolutely no time. So you want cases, you want law, you want authority. I don't know if your authority is any good at all because I hadn't had a chance to look at it.
which
But I'm
is
telling him
another-
right now that the evil, the horrible evil that he tries to protect his clients from, having what they say here today to be used against them in these little old criminal cases, that ain't there. And the reason it isn't there is because I'm telling you that we will not use any statement they make, these defendants, in this case today, against them in any of those criminal proceedings that are pending in the municipal court. Any.
This guy look evil to you?
What? What?
Yes, that guy
looked
evil to you. He has to, okay, yes.
How do we determine today, now, whether we move forward or don't move forward? Is it the city? Is it the chair? Is it you? Because we're really arguing what he says he doesn't want to argue, and we're sitting here wondering, how do we go forward or
You
back?
say here you didn't have enough time to look over everything, so what's the problem with having more time?
Yeah,
Well, because, we're in.
Dave Parsons, city manager. We have made every effort to get this squared away. We've been pigeonholed, kicked down the road. You guys are the authority in this matter. Exercise your authority. Thank you.
So who determines that?
You do,
You guys are, by the charter, you guys have the authority in this matter. You don't need to listen to this guy. This is our team. By the charter, this is in your court. It's your guys' job to make this decision, not to listen to this and get kicked down the road. You guys are the authority.
And it is
Don't
five
listen to
people.
anything else.
It's all five members.
They've snubbed us. They've broken every law in the city. Let's go after it and fix it.
It's five members and you would vote on this matter as a body. Each one of you would vote and the majority would
So we need a
prevail.
motion.
Yes, a motion as,
Okay.
I want one motion right now. Can you explain to me why through these years you've made agreements, just like you stated that you've agreed to move the buildings, but it's gonna take you to December? That the buildings are vacant, why are you fighting it? Wasting our time along
Well,
with.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, we had an agreement that was close to that would have provided that timeline, but it was never agreed to. So technically, They haven't agreed to move them. They've
Well,
they've chosen to come here for a variance on having to move them first. So I think the first issue is, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, the first issue is to determine how you approach the stay that they have requested.
Yeah.
I think our legal counsel from the city representing you and the city has told you that nothing that they say here, if they choose to say anything, will be used. So I think that makes it relatively moot what he's arguing. Nothing again, for the record, as Mike has said, will be used. We don't need to do that. You have all the facts you need to move forward with the variance request, which is the secondary part after we get past this first determination on this stay, which again, staff would certainly concur with our own legal counsel, is that it's moot. Nothing is going to affect the criminal case should it come. And don't forget that no matter what you decide, there's still a constitution and a due process. So I don't want you to think that you become the final judge and jury. You do in the city's matter. But again, if this gets into court, there's still a due process. So they still have that constitutional right, as Mike indicated, to probably make their case in district court. So like I said, that's my simple observation of
Mr.
staff
Chairman,
to you.
members of the commission, there are two additional reasons that have just come up for you to grant the stay. Mr. Morris says he needs time to read my citations. That's a reason to put it up to stay. Second reason is that they can't guarantee that the GLO won't use anything my client comes up here and says to you in their enforcement actions. And thirdly, in response to your question, I just started representing on the beach within the last couple of months. I have no idea about the history of it. I've just been involved in this. Why are we here? We're here because it was scheduled, and I couldn't just not show up.
Okay, where I have the problem is, it just seems to been on our agendas. It's been, city's been fighting it for years. You know, it doesn't seem any good faith effort for the client to comply with city ordinance and the dune protection agency. I mean, Jesus, somebody's got a business on the beach and should know the Dune Protection Act backwards and forwards. And yeah, you know, we're a pushover compared to the GLO when it comes to messing with the dunes. So
Exactly why this proceeding
I
is
just-
to stay.
Rick, is our position or is our charge here to number one, vote on the motion to stay?
I think that'd be appropriate to get it
Yes.
on the record to just say, no, we're not gonna accept the stay. We're gonna move forward.
Either agree with the motion to stay and abate the proceeding or not.
You ready to
So
entertain a
that
motion?
would be the first thing, the preliminary vote.
Okay, yes, no,
You ready to entertain a motion?
yes, I am.
I move that we continue with the variance request.
When you say
In other words,
continue,
you
mean-
deny the motion to stay.
Right, right. So I move that we deny the motion to stay and move forward with the variance request in our agenda.
Okay, any further discussion?
Well, no, do we need a second before we discuss?
Paul just did.
I second.
Oh, okay. I just feel like we are the low man on the totem pole in forms of government. We've got GLO in this. We've got a municipal court and possibly a district court. And I just don't feel like that we should vote on it. I think it should go to the municipal court first. Since it is criminal charges, because we're civil, we're not criminal.
Okay, but
Yes.
in my opinion, and I'm just a building official here. My opinion is that we've got two issues. Okay. Number one, have they violated the civil ordinances of this city? Yes. Are we involved with their criminal? No. So the question is, do we refuse the stay and carry on with the violation of the variance? Or do you just hold it up and say nothing?
I'm not saying we shouldn't vote on it. We'll have an opportunity to vote on it I just feel like that, again, we got two higher authorities than us. on this.
Mallory, let me help you a little bit too, because because it gets kind of complicated when you hear the word criminal language, but most all the cases you hear when it relates to substandard housing and where we've issued a citation for violations of permits, substandard is a Class B misdemeanor, it's called criminal. So all of those that you hear are criminal in the technical sense. So I don't want us to get too caught up in worrying about, oh my gosh, we're ruling on a criminal matter. You do it all the time. Those citations that are issued for substandard housing that carry a Class B misdemeanor violation is criminal in the language of the courts. And then secondly, and also let's not forget, the General Land Office is a political sovereign subdivision. So irrespective of us, they are the state. So really what we recommend, suggest, ask of them is irrelevant to them. They're a state agency. They will pursue whatever they feel is in the best interest of the state on a separate track if necessary. So like I said, the GLO delegates us certain authority to manage what they ask, the permitting and stuff. But when it gets into litigation and things like that, and again, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, like I said, they're a separate political subdivision. They'll pursue whatever they feel is necessary for the interest of the state, not the city.
Well, whatever we choose to decide today will go into the court, the next court, and they'll say, well, they've already made a judgment against you, which is not fair for them. They need to go to the court, the big court, and then come down to us as to how I feel.
Well,
You said you needed more time to look over this,
I
don't,
no.
but there's that whatever judgment we give, the higher courts are going to look at that judgment.
in every case that you have ever.
Well, actually, we're not here for any of this.
I understand.
Reminder,
I
you
understand.
guys are the city's Board of Adjustment. You guys are not here to look into the future at other courts. Your guys' job, what you've been appointed to by city council, is to follow the charter and do what the charter tells you to do, not what some future court might decide. Your guys' charge today is to deal with a variance. This whole stay, this is not your charge. To kick something down the road to another court because someone has told you that this is going to another court. That's not your charge. Your duty is to do what the BOA is supposed to do under the auspices of the city charter and what your job is. And that job today is to deal with this variance, not to look into the future.
So
and
they've
to
already,
analyze something. Your job by the charter is to deal with this variance.
and they've already said that they have agreed in some other case to move some of these buildings.
We have no agreement.
We have no agreement with them.
We have conferred in an attempt to settle. By we, I mean, Mr. George and
Someone in charge of that.
And at one point, I felt like we had an agreement. But then it turned out that there were other issues concerning, regularly, if I don't include a wall that was constructed without a permit onto which is attached electrical meter. Is that correct, Hal? Okay, so those two, they want to keep those two things. That was the remaining point of disagreement. It was, and I think that was it, wasn't it? Just those two.
Is there
things?
In the shed,
There was a shed.
the little shed.
A shed.
Oh,
that we wanted to keep.
Here you go.
Small shed.
Are there dates for when they
That's when they
put
put the meter on it.
the meter?
But, yeah, remember that the shed, although smaller than the code requires for permitting, that permitting that we require is something different from what the GLO requires. You put a shed out there in that dune protected area and you're gonna have to get a dune permit.
And this was done
so
during rebuilding after the hurricane?
What was done?
No, you have the time, you have the
No.
timeline there. This has been
There's a time-
systematic.
This was done over the course of a number of years. And those dates, post date, before that, there had been some permits sought and secured for various activities out there by these defendants. It's just that at some point in time, the defendants did things, added things, altered structures, hooked up water sewer without permits. It just all of a sudden the permitting stopped. So
Here's my problem, is that they have said they're not going to speak in their defense today, and I don't want to make a decision without hearing from them. And so that leads me to say, well, then it needs to go. I understand that emotions are very high in this, and I would like to see an agreement between you, sir, and the city so that we don't have to sit up here and try to pick this apart. So, you know, that's where I'm coming from.
Mallory, let me just say that again, as staff, we're prepared to give you all the information you need on the variance request. Again, let's assuming we get past this stay thing. I am very confident that the facts will speak for themselves to allow you to fulfill your responsibility, the charter without them having to testify. I at least hear us out. The facts are so blatant and open and shut that I don't know that you're going to really need that.
But I'm still going to want to hear from the other side, Rick. That's what I'm saying.
If they're not choosing to speak, then they're not
I understand
choosing to
that.
speak. I mean, you guys are no different than P and Z and council. You know, we have things that show up at council and someone says, well, I'm going to sue. Council says, great, go sue. That's not our issue. Your issue is city issues.
I understand that.
And you have all the information to make a decision on a variance request. If they don't choose to speak because of some other court issue, that's their problem.
That's their problem.
That's their problem.
But we have a motion. It's not like they're not coming forward. We do have a motion that we have to.
Right. All I'm
You vote
saying
on
is that other courts issues
Let me-
outside of your guys' charge isn't your business. It's not your concern, just like it isn't at P and Z, just like it isn't at city council. People say that all the time. It's when we're going to sue. And then council doesn't say, well, maybe we should go figure out this lawsuit before we vote on a plat. That's not how we operate as the city. You guys conduct city business. If someone has a court case that they want to do after the fact, so be it. But your guys' charge is to not monkey around with some court that's 6 months away, is to vote on this variance.
If this council wants to hear from the people.
And they don't
and
choose to
they-
come
and they
up.
Bring us something to ask us to wait. That's something we need to consider.
You don't need to consider it.
Well,
I don't think so.
you have the city's attorney
Look,
that represents us and this commission that's given you his advice to protect the city. Again, you can vote as you feel necessary, but I mean, I think that we're laying out a pretty good argument.
Let me say something. a second. All right. This thing's been going on for years. They have made no good faith effort to work with the city or the neighbors, as you can see from the narrative in this package. You know, I don't think kicking this down the road, if for nothing else, denying the variance is going to put a timeline on it where they've got to do something. All right, just like we did all those substandard stuff after the storm. They're not willing to do anything. Why? If their buildings are vacant, they're not being used, why not show some good faith effort to move them? But, and
And all of
Okay.
these seem to be built after the hurricane,
They are.
when a lot of people were not getting. a
Some are
permit.
pre-hurricane.
We started the permitting process 2 days after the hurricane.
And they
Nobody didn't
started-
get permit.
And they were getting permits in 16, then the hurricane happened, they stopped getting permits, they started just trying to.
So that's okay that everybody else
No, I'm not saying it's
just doesn't get
okay.
permits?
I'm just saying that,
Some of these
you
buildings,
know, if they came back and tried to get a permit just recently.
you can't.
So some of the buildings were some of these buildings were brought in pre-hurricane. If you look at pages 14, 15, 16, it gives you the dates and when they were brought in.
But, you know,
Mr. Chairman, I
and
need to
you're
point
talking
out-
a hurricane. We went through those months and months and months of these hearings,
Mhm.
telling people to tear down something they didn't want to tear down, or for whatever reason, they couldn't afford it, or whatever. But in the interest of the city, those substandard structures need to be removed. This is no different, and there's no good faith effort on the other side. Let's talk about the neighbors that you see in your packet, how much problem the neighbors have had,
I just got,
and it's just, you know,
Mr. Chairman, what brought us here started March the 23rd. It hadn't been going on for years. The issues that we're here before you today, they issued the notice on March the 23rd. The property that they're talking about has been on the tax roll since 2015. And this proceeding, what brought us here, these cases started March the 23rd. It hadn't been years.
I just
Okay.
need to correct that, just one perhaps minor correction. The way the city found out was not because of
they came forward.
Well, I think Glenn's correct in that
No,
he
no,
says,
it
he says
happened.
years, because if you go back to the start of when work was conducted without permit, it is years. It's years and years and
Right.
years. So the chairman's correct. This started in when's the first building? 2016, 2011. So yeah, so it's over 10 years of a person being,
That are
Heck,
obviously
I'm
the
not
ones
pulling
that are having
permits.
trouble
Right.
trying to-
so it does go on.
And it's also accurate that
Protection.
the first time the city,
Let's
Well,
let's
sure
just,
they're
go ahead,
upset.
go ahead.
that the city,
Hold on.
wait, too many conversations, guys.
Hey,
So then they give you-
Mike, you were gonna say something?
it's also true that the city did not find out about these hidden huts and hovels until February 6th, I think it was. And it wasn't because anybody came to them who owns or operates that property down there on
I
the
understand
beach.
that.
Okay,
It-
well,
It came to them somewhat inadvertently, that is better described to you by Carla, Nicole, Rick. And they found out about it February 6th, and shortly thereafter, perhaps on the same day they found out, Dave Parsons called and let them know, and they were told they would move everything. Everything would be removed. Finally, it became clear that they weren't going to be removed when the variance request was filed. Not by us, obviously, but rather by the defendants. I don't recall the date of the
March
filing.
8th.
March 8th.
March 8th. So March 8th, the defendants invoked the jurisdiction of this body, not the city, although the city did then follow up with responses to what they had requested, and also to say that these things should be torn down in addition because of this, of that, no permitting. Dangerous nature of the structures, and that's the first time shortly after February 6th is when the city staff first went out there and actually looked at these things, photographed some of them, and just said, this is just unbelievably dangerous
Dangerous.
construction.
All right, well, it's, do we have to have a vote on this motion?
I think you should vote on it's entitled motion to abate.
The
Okay.
motion made was to deny the motion to stay.
Oh, okay, then you,
We actually have a motion on the table.
Okay,
oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
we've got a motion to deny. The
motion to stay.
And then a second.
In a second, yes.
By Noe. And a second,
By Paul.
second here.
And now you call a vote.
Any
You have to have a
further?
motion and a
All
second.
Right, just to be
Yeah.
clear, a yes vote is to deny.
To deny the
Yes,
motion
vote
to
is
stay.
tonight.
Yes.
I got it.
All those in favor of denying the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed,
No,
No,
we have 2 noes. And 3. Motion to deny, correct?
Motion carries.
Okay. Now,
Did you vote? Did he vote?
The mayor did, he voted. He voted
Chairman?
yes.
Mayor.
He used
I
to
watched
be-
loud enough.
No, it's-
I want to make sure everybody heard that. Sometimes my hearing aid don't work, but my voice does.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Next item. I guess we're to the. We're.
Now we're to the actual variance
We're to the
itself.
variance. Here to take appropriate action, unsafe substandard structure, 2016 on the beach road. Okay, everybody's got plenty of information. I'm open this by saying that by denying this variance, we're gonna put a deadline to this scenario. And as David and Mike and everybody else has said, what the courts do, they can fight it out.
And we originally had drafted an order which did impose, I believe, a 30-day deadline.
And they have that.
And the board should have that document. And that document said 30 days, you either tear it down and remove everything, or the city will do it and charge you for it.
Yeah, that document.
That's not in here.
It was never agreed to.
No, it can't be, because it's actually, it could have been agreed to by them, but they didn't agree to that.
Right.
I was just trying to give you a
Right.
chronology. And then I got with Hal, we talked, and I prepared a second order that was intended to be signed, and I thought would be signed by the defendants. And that would have been around the end of May. May 31 is when it was sent to Hal and copied to the staff. Do you have that agreed order?
The petition is what we're talking.
Petition.
No, I'm getting to the agreed order.
They don't have a copy of Hal's order. The city has a copy. I'm sorry, the agreement between you and Hal.
Oh, well, it was an oral agreement between Hal and I sent it to the city. Because that, and then we thought, but after May 31, that there would come a time when everybody had read it and was happy with signing it, but that hasn't happened, because it's obvious. So you should have that agreed order for distribution too. I mean, that's the last thing that Hal and I had agreed to.
Yeah. Well, that was.
And that's the thing, which it was a give and take. We did not go into a great deal of detail about like what Hal calls my inflammatory language about the nastiness of the hovels and such as that, but it was just an order which said, get rid of them or the city will do it. And it gave them until December 31 to do it. So that was an agreement that we were going to present to you, but it was never agreed to by the defendants. So we're before you.
And that's, Mike, that's why we didn't include it, because up until
Oh, it's-
this meeting, it was
yeah.
never agreed to. So we kept the original petition in here.
Well, as we did when we had to declare some of the houses that we did unfit, and we gave them like 30 days, 60 days. Can we do something like that? For some sort of movement on the property, just like we did when we voted on all those the housing situations after the hurricane. Is it possible to do something like that?
So, yeah, I mean, you don't have the right to do that.
Yeah.
Right. What staff would request is that once we've talked about the variance request itself, which I think will be pretty brief, is that you just review the petition again that's in here. I think the building officials already signed that, and then we'll entertain our motion, just like we would for any other substandard hearing, is it motion to repair, well, in this case, it's got to be removed because the dwellings aren't proper size. There's a lot, they need to be removed. So in this case, there is no repair. It's just the dwellings be removed.
In the agreed order, I called it agreed because I thought it would be agreed.
Mhm.
But it does give a lot of time for them to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. It gives them until December 31, 2023 to remove all the buildings.
Move or remove, are you saying remove or move or remove?
Remove.
Well,
Remove.
by utilizing the word remove, I mean move the buildings off of the property
Okay.
out of the city limits. We cannot, we do not care where they move them, but it has to be out of the city limits. But that's giving them, what is that, 6 months, close to 6 months.
An awful long time.
So it isn't as if we were just playing hard-nosed football and cheating. We gave them 6 months to get rid of this stuff. And I don't know that I can say that, and that's how much time they requested. I thought, great, if it will result in an agreement, let's do it. Let's go ahead and agree, give them about 3 months more than the board might have given them. Normally, the board might give 90 days. We're giving them 6 months, so almost double that. Plenty of time to get rid of it, comply.
And to the fact that the buildings are not used. I guess that's testimony. Not now. I just don't understand the delay tactics, and I'm kind of frustrated with it. It's been on our agenda more than it ought to be. I personally think Mike was more than generous, giving him 6 months. I mean, geez. You know.
That was an extremely lengthy time frame.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to give them that much. And there again, if they don't like it to us, you know, we're here to protect the ordinances and the neighbors. We've read some of these comments from the neighbors about the variance. And I think for the citizens of Port Aransas, we've done a great job of cleaning up this town and getting it back operating and running good, and we don't need a thorn in our side.
It's staff's hope that you just recognize the danger in allowing these situations to, I mean, it's tough enough that that happened right under our noses for this long. But the message it sends by not requiring people be held to the standards that everyone else are, as far as permits, inspections, safe and secure dwellings. You know, it's just a dangerous message to send if we don't hold, you know, everybody to the same standards for permitting.
Okay.
So I've got 2 orders here. The first order was one that I did before we figured out that, well, maybe we ought to talk and get something worked out. The second order is one which was kind of agreed to by between Hal and I, being something that we could recommend. And that's the one that gave time all the way to December 31 to remove the buildings, to move them out of the city limits. I'd like a moment to talk to Hal and see if there is some way that we can still come to an agreement. Either utilizing, if we don't come to an agreement, then, you know, I would say we just proceed with the first order. If not, but give us a chance to talk about it a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, we can.
Just a reset.
Take a little break.
A little break.
Well, shoot. Take
We
a
go
break
together.
or continue to discuss.
Well, just give us a little recess, and we're gonna do our business. And, but if we need any 2 cents worth from me, 6 months is too long.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
anyway,
we're just gonna
I'm
give you
on.
guys a chance
We
to
didn't
talk
want to talk about
about.
other business.
Yeah, we're gonna go to our other.
Yeah.
I understand. Well, then we'll come back in a minute.
All right.
Move on to the
Is
next.
that agreeable to everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right. We're gonna adjourn this, not adjourn, recess that issue. We're still in session for the Board of Adjustment.
And there was no plumbing in it. And that
Or-
would give them the water department to disconnect the water sewer and call them back within 10 to 15 days and have them come look at it, and they have yet to do that as
Might go
well.
to 2.2.
Okay,
They don't want-
consider and take appropriate action. Variance request 23-000936. Requested by Arbor Cross Home LP, property location 2006. Bentgrass.
Bentgrass.
Somebody, you have a narrative on this one, Rick?
Yes, sir. Again, this is kind of the same story as we've told with a couple of others. Although it took a while for them to get this built. This house was started before we required the form board surveys. And again, is a good example as to why we went with that. Is one more safety measure, but this, so as he said, several inches below what our required design flood elevation is, which is base flood plus 1 foot, and the 1 foot we call freeboard is that height additional to the base flood. So it's a little bit short of the plus 1 foot, although it is at FEMA level.
It's above FEMA's base flood elevation.
Right.
It's not above our
Which-
design flood elevation,
Right.
which is allowed. They would need flood vents at that point. Right now, we don't have the ability to put in flood vents
Mhm.
because of the way the construction of the garage,
But it's above.
but it's
a
above,
garage, it's on the ground, so I don't understand.
it's above FEMA's flood.
But are we talking about the slab of the garage?
Yeah.
I didn't know they had to be a foot above base
Yes.
flood
At-
elevation.
They don't necessarily.
But if it's an
But if
enclosure,
it's below a foot above base flood elevation, or if it's below base flood elevation, which you're allowed to do,
Mhm.
then you only are required to have flood vents. So they could put flood vents in it, and this building would be perfectly legal.
So we're not talking
They-
living space, but normal garage with
Correct.
walls, but now they're gonna have flood. in it.
And noise.
They
The
have,
thing is, the flood vents are required on this particular house because they are below our 1 foot.
plus
level.
1.
Now, it's not because they're below
FEMA.
FEMA's level,
Okay.
they're below ours.
So-
so
And
really
what are you
the,
saying?
really the variance
What's required?
flood vents, the openings in the walls that let the
But
water
I
come
will
in and
tell
out.
you,
They don't have the ability to put those in because of the design of the house.
number one is the design of the house. Number two, there is a concrete wall about this high surrounding the interior of that garage. So they would have to go into the concrete and burrow all the way out from underneath the house to get those flood vents to work.
Wow.
So that's what I know from the design of that house.
Okay, and they're basically
They want to get away from it.
within a foot.
Yeah.
Inches.
Maybe between 6 and 7 inches.
Okay,
We've done this a lot.
This is very similar to all the other ones.
And
that
it's
we've
no
passed.
habitable area that's affected, so. It's a garage,
yeah.
okay? And there's nothing that will will destroy the framing above that freeboard area because it's on top of a piece of concrete,
Okay.
all right?
Would you like to speak on this
I think they pretty much.
or you just listen?
Yes.
That's
We
smart.
pretty much gave him his case.
That's the way I do it. All right. Okay. Any further discussion? Could we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance.
I'll say.
Motion by Valerie. Second. Anybody? Is there further discussion? All those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right.
Let's get to 108 now. This will be fun. Also another building before the form board survey was required.
Okay. What's the procedure now?
Oh,
We can move on
Do
to,
we now take this elevations?
say it again. So this house was started in 2021. As of January 1st, 2022, we require everybody to give us a form board survey that includes their elevations. So we have caught a number of these since 2022, since the beginning of that. And hopefully
These are-
solves that situation. This
these are
house
the
has
left
been
ones.
under construction for almost 3 years. So this is one that was prior to that has been under construction for this long and has gotten to, is just now getting to that point.
Okay. All right, moving to the next item. Consider and take appropriate action, variance request 23-000923. Applicant is requesting to reduce freeboard requirement to the lowest horizontal member of a residential structure.
Yeah.
Property location 108 Darling Lane.
Let's talk about Darling.
So, this is a similar situation, but this house was begun in February of 2022, so after our free board requirement. This lot is unique because a very small portion of the lot is in what's called a velocity zone. So a velocity flood zone requires a different kind of slab. You can't just have a concrete slab, you have to have pier and beams. And so these houses that look like they're on concrete slabs actually have pier and beams under the ground. So whenever they are measuring for their compliance with our floodplain codes, they're not measuring the top of the slab. In a VE zone, you have to measure the lowest horizontal number, which is most of the time the bottom of that slab. So this house is supposed to be at 12 foot. So our requirement, FEMA's base flood elevation is 11 foot. Our requirement is plus that additional foot, so it's at 12 foot. They are built now at 11.83. And there was some change in the field that, you know, the person in the field didn't realize we had that foot of requirement. They knew they were well above FEMA's requirement, just a little bit shy of ours. And then that extra measurement where it comes underneath rather than on top. This is just a very small portion of the house. I would say probably 1/10 of the house is in this flood zone. The rest of the house is in a higher flood zone that would count the top of the slab rather than the bottom of the horizontal member. So in our situation, the house is not finished. They caught this at the form board survey. So this is, but it's enough under construction that it would be hugely expensive to meet that additional
6 inches,
not even
No.
3 inches.
3 inches.
So
.2.
how is this going to change if we find things that are built after 2022 that are under
Well,
our freeboard? And we keep saying, oh, well, you're over. You're over FEMA, but you contractors should know. Why are we going to keep, I'm not saying we shouldn't for this, I'm saying,
I
but why
understand.
in the future are we gonna keep going, oh, you're just a couple inches,
No, no.
oh, you're just a couple inches? It's gotta be a date where it stops, it's like, no, you're a contractor, you're gonna pay for
Yeah, but this would be a hard, expensive lesson.
Yeah.
I-
it. Well, I'm
Or
not
a
saying.
I know what you're
that-
saying.
I'm saying that this is, you know,
okay.
this is a problem that might keep going on. I mean,
Right,
we
it's
made
not-
that law.
It's not as big a problem as you think, because this is one house out of the last
Yeah.
600 that were built that
Right.
come up with a situation like
And
this, which
also-
is what the variance procedure is for.
So are all these contractors, do they come to the city? Do they get the rules? How are they to
Yeah.
know
So-
that we have that foot?
Here's the deal. All the contractors have been told, all of them, that your best bet is to get us a form survey with the slab height on it before you go vertical. Now, they all know they're supposed to do that. They know that if they don't do that and they come up short, we have every right in the world to make them tear the building down. So that's why I require form surveys now. That's why we always
This is
put,
different.
we check and make sure on the plans that everything is above BFE plus.
Right. That-
We require.
Yeah, Tina,
So
the-
when they
the deal
come
here,
to
though-
get the permit, they're told this is our
Yes.
Right,
requirement.
here's
Yes.
the problem with this one, why it's so unique is that most everything else, they're sticking that survey mark, that measuring device they use
In the middle.
right here
On top,
on top.
Okay.
because
In a VE zone,
Have to go.
even though it's only a small portion, they were the measurement that
They
FEMA
should have
uses
used was
yeah.
under.
and that we use is down here.
that's called lowest horizontal.
So
number.
that's not gonna happen on a
That-
very
now-
large.
Now, but to answer your question, yeah, we gotta make sure and do we figure out how many more VE properties they even have?
There's not many. There's maybe, because the maps changed at the end of October in 2022. Nearly all of the properties in Port Aransas are no longer in a VE zone. Vacant properties.
Right.
Or not.
So it what?
Correct. So this specific circumstance shouldn't come up in any other situation. And if this was the house, It's literally this portion of the house back here that's in the VE zone, so only this portion is not in compliance by 0.17 of a foot. The rest of the house is absolutely in compliance
You know,
by our design flood elevation.
let's make it-
FEMA, everything's perfect in FEMA's eyes.
But to follow up, Tina, to answer your question, we will make, we just now need to make sure that for those very few that are in the VE zone, that when they do that form board survey, they're not looking at this measurement,
And-
they're looking at this one.
And
Say
to be,
you're
to
in
be
the
fair,
zone, you have to.
to be fair, everybody knew that. They knew this ahead of time. This was a mistake on their part.
Yeah.
That is very expensive to correct at this point for 0.17 portions of a foot. Do I think that it's really going to increase the life safety of this house? I
No. Because this house is actually built to a higher standard because of the way they have to build the slab. Water can come and go and flow and scour out the whole underneath the slab because it's not a structural slab. It just looks like it.
If enough water came out, you could have no sand under this house and it would look like a house on pilings.
On
It was kind of,
concrete.
what Mustang Tires or whoever it was
Yeah.
that got washed out.
So
So.
anyway, so like Nicole said, it's a game of numbers. We continue to try to get better at figuring out how to get the information to them. It costs them more money in insurance, not that that's punitive for us, but it will cost them those few inches will cost them significantly on their insurance.
As is the case for every flood variance that we pass, regardless if we pass the variance, they're still gonna get hit with higher flood premiums because they're not built to the perfect compliance
Why did the city add that extra code?
for additional safety. And we did it because the 2015 building codes did it, and we adopted the 2015 building codes. We appreciated that additional foot. Houses in Channel Vista during the hurricane, had they had to have a foot of freeboard, a lot of them might not have flooded at all.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think we could go more freeboard and protect even more properties, but that's a conversation.
Higher is always better.
My house had about a foot and a half of water and we're built right at base flood elevation. So if we had had 2 feet of freeboard, my house would have flooded at all.
It was a bluff. And it failed.
I had 3.5 feet, so it didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Need a motion.
Well, you got a motion yet?
No.
All right, I'll make a motion,
Okay.
make a motion that we grant the variance.
We have a motion, Valerie,
You second,
Yes, I'll second it.
there you go. Let's go. Come on, good to see you. Good to see you. God, yeah. All right, any further discussion on this issue? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
It's a slab on grade, that's where I got.
It's not slab
It's
on
not.
grade. They have pilings
Okay,
underneath.
okay.
It's an underground
It was.
piling system. It's, I mean, that
I think
that
it's a house like-
foundation system is probably 300 grand
Anytime,
without you even begin.
oh, yeah.
anytime we use the term slab, it means it's structural. It's actually supporting the house. This one is flat work. That-
It's flat work on top of piles.
Yeah.
Pilings.
Can we take
Take a few minute recess?
Yeah, we'll take a
Mr. Chairman, you want to just do a
Short reset.
Well, we're gonna adjourn and then.
Recess.
Yeah, just take a recess, take a break.
Check on the.
10-minute recess. We'll check on
Miss.
this.
All right,
It's a volley pops. They're in your office, aren't they?
Yeah, there's some in the hall too.
and coming back after lunch is not acceptable.
No,
No, I've got it.
I
I got
tried.
it.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Need a ringer off.
Oh.
I turned the ringer off.
Around for it.
Has like 5 different ringers on it. So if I don't go in.
Is that an Android? Turn it on, open your screen. Let me show you
I'm
something.
turning it on now. I pushed.
No,
the
no,
button.
when you get it on, let me show you something. Hold down, when it gets all set up, hold down.
Well, how's your summer going?
So far, so good.
Yeah,
Probably have
Busy.
there.
yeah.
Yeah,
You see something that says,
man, it hadn't slowed down though, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's been busy for,
you can see it.
man, ever since COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See that wheel right there?
Oh, yeah. That's
The
a
top
setting
restaurant
wheel.
on the island now.
That should be. Oh, this is,
Oh,
oh, that
really?
one is down there.
Oh,
What's your
We're
code?
always busy.
Yeah.
my kid put it on there.
Well, I
It's so
know it's
long.
always busy when I want to go there.
Big one.
Yeah, the locals can't get there anymore.
Setting,
Usually they just either
And
call, say, hey,
down
can you
here,
come in or just walk in.
where it says notifications.
Now it's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, we're running. But same as everyone else in town, we got employees.
Sensitive conduct and
Sure,
lock.
yeah.
So we're like short 4 people. Yeah.
See there?
And then trying to get people to
Notification
come
dot
Here, there's-
on.
stay,
See,
nobody wants to
Oh,
work anymore.
so don't want that on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that one right there is one I turned.
They
on.
Oh.
pay and not do it.
All right, but now
And
it
it's like
vibrates.
vibrates?
Now it just
Yeah.
vibrates. But you can turn it back on if you want to hear the volume. Okay, so that's where that is.
What do you do?
All I get is spam calls all day. The other day I got 15 spam calls.
Probably up there in Burton.
Every building is, every building in the city is paying.
Operation.
I'm like, my phone rings, I don't even go anymore. I'm like,
Well, now it vibrate when everything will vibrate now.
well, that's good. Those Monday kids. I think one of them, of my 31-year-olds,
Yeah,
that's too early. And my,
I lived in New Orleans.
Spam.
Oh, okay.
They're all spam.
there's,
Friend of mine was.
He calls me yesterday
restaurant in
laughing.
New Orleans,
Yeah.
asked me to go-
my car's gonna cut. Guess how much my car's gonna stop? I don't
I
want.
lived in New
I-
Orleans
I
for
really
6
don't.
months.
You don't
I can tell you that, so that's a shock.
Hey, Mal, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
200 people in town and
200, is that all?
That you was a new guy.
Yes, say.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
About it.
It's,
That one.
you know,
Got it?
got some places.
Yeah, I
Okay, good.
got it. We got all these people out here.
Yeah, we like to play gospel music at our city council meeting.
Webinar.
Yeah.
Over them ships
Yeah.
there. That's- I mean, we've got a place called
See there.
New Willow
You force
Cafe.
them into that.
That's good.
That's fun.
And that's
Talking.
Side of this.
talking there in David's office.
I don't want to decide.
30,
this. I want
30,
to-
40.
Thing is, they
They're
won't
only
do
open
anything until you refuse to.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
How you get there?
That was their political
So
campaign
1 o'clock.
to shove this thing back 9 months.
Next door. Next door. You can go that way.
Give everybody a copy.
No, anyway.
No,
It's nice when you got some good food options, towns like
Hear
that.
that portion.
It is.
That portion of the-
Take out down the way.
Living their stuff.
They want the wall.
You know what I'm saying?
We're about 5 miles out of town.
Yeah.
And I don't see.
Four long ones, yeah.
Except for.
So, I think I'm just gonna go back.
You're a renter.
That,
And it's not.
I bet that-
Okay.
you know, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
So,
where is the- Can I-
Won't see it, or-
Done.
How many head do you run with those?
Just 4.
Well, this is the first quarter. That's nice.
Jim and Janie McGee.
Yep.
Had a place. Yeah, now I'm a-
December 31.
They thought I had wrong one. They had a bunch up there. in Northgate.
And that's what I think. But it's not because of what they're.
Anyway, they're always
So,
trying to get rid of.
This is.
Come pick out
The one that was sent
couple
by
half
Vince,
Yeah.
And, you know.
All right.
Now, they've all-
My son told me that. He,
Right there.
wife,
Well, I'm looking at it.
That's gone.
he went up there.
Which one are y'all looking at?
Get there.
So you looked at one, I don't know which version that was. but
Their ranch had
things
had-
change over
Trying to
time.
call it.
Here it is.
You. Ratty.
You wanna see the 90 days?
I mean, I believe.
You know.
Well, it's
There,
two.
90 days. This is the order.
Well, you need a
Should
mama.
make copies of it.
There's one view.
Rest you
So they're-
next conference.
So you go into the hole. Those are, so make sure it's a
Call
collar.
it.
Yeah.
Burn
I
off.
like that color.
Yeah. And, anyway.
You guys had-
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had names by the time.
But
Not your-
I thought this went to the building department.
Yes, I'll be there. That was on Saturday. And their ranch hand is gonna deliver next week.
Well, you could have everybody
Yeah,
sign
bottle
off.
cap.
Sign copies after everybody.
Drop a
signs.
cat.
That would be better.
Oh,
Take one
man.
copy.
Expecting
Can I
two,
keep- Let me keep that.
3. Unfortunately, he was.
I want the original back.
Clear as mud. Clear as mud.
Damn, he-
All that.
all right, he's on 0.
Wipe it out.
I don't know. Them cataract, I guess.
So now I got to, I go out there every morning.
Okay, there's a damn German shepherd.
You're a cat man?
No, damn,
People came.
I got German shepherd.
Otherwise, they'll go wild on you. I know it. That's why.
Gotta wait for everybody to get back.
I had the first time we went in for vaccination, I had to.
You didn't?
That steer,
Why then?
that wool cut. So he's here.
Yeah.
Great, oh, yeah. So I wasn't-
What?
And if you like.
Well, you don't.
Leave the phone, it's right there.
Every animal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Under the folder. This folder.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it is. I heard it ring a while ago.
Darn phone.
That's what I'm here for, to keep up with everybody's phones.
I like this matching these phones. They're about that big and you have to pick it, it's connected. by wire.
Yeah, yeah, the box phone.
Because we need
Yeah.
to displace you.
Yeah.
Why, it's like. Ready to, like, this is that, this is all we are.
What do you do now? Oh, yeah.
Forces them to consider us to take a district just every other $10,000.
Where'd you go?
This is always before that.
If I was a man, I'd go out.
Right here, so.
My daughter's beautiful and I'd go out with if I was a man, so. I don't know what that
I've
makes.
never met your daughter.
He's 16.
That's too young.
There you go.
Thank you very much. No, that's way too young.
No, my 32-year-old, she's pretty too.
No,
It's the 16-year-old that I'm worried about.
yeah, that would be what I'd be worried about these days.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Tennessee kicks off his run today. Christie, Pence, we'll load up the Republican field again. 5,500 of them people running.
This one, that position right there. That gives you a lot of info right there. What is it that we should deal with? Everybody else gets that.
You're making copies?
Yeah, that was the order. The order is 3 pages. Voters. Voters are not the-
For the last 3 pages?
No, the first 3. First 4. I'm sorry, 4. Yeah. And I think that one's 90 days.
And if we can kind of keep this to I've got to get out of
Okay.
here by 12:15 because I've got an appointment at Corpus.
We can,
Yeah.
12:15, 12:15, 12:20. I need to be heading
Oh,
out.
she drives really fast on that island road to get here. We were like holding up the meeting.
Mayor, you can go ahead and proceed. Like I said, she's just getting everybody a copy of the order, but we're not to that point yet, so.
Where do we want to go back to?
You're back on the record.
Yes, sir.
Okay, reconvened.
Huh?
Are we reconvene?
Reconvened.
Yeah, I was hoping. Well, we can read it. Yeah. All right, I want to bring back to order.
We're at the point on the agenda for the property owner to respond.
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you. Again, I'm Hal George, represent on the beach. I currently represent 5 cities. I've worked for cities since 1971. So I want to personally tell you how much I appreciate your service. What citizens like you do is what makes cities work, what makes this a great country, because we have folks like you willing to volunteer your time. Another thing I want to tell you is that I'm a lawyer. I represent a client. What I say is not evidence. You don't consider it as evidence. And Mr. Morris of the GLO cannot use my words against my client in a criminal proceeding. When this issue first arose, and my client received the notice, talked to the city manager, agreed to move the buildings, and then immediately were hit with criminal citations. That tends to harden attitudes. It really does. We thought we had an agreement. I'll tell you straight up that my client has told me that the buildings are vacant. Yeah. You can't afford housing in Port Aransas. And in my other life, I represent some property owners appealing their property valuations to the appraisal district. I can't afford to live in Port Aransas. My wife's wanted a place over here for years. I can't afford it. Folks that work at a motel or at restaurants, where are they going to live? They're going to live in little structures like this. It's going to give them a break. One of the people that my client told me about was a lady that was homeless. He gave her a place to live, and she's now working, got a job and her own location. Talk about we're evil. My clients were giving folks that couldn't afford another place to live, someplace to sit for a while to get on their feet. But they've agreed. We're going to move the things. They're out. The buildings are vacant now. Here's our problem. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your comments about this thing's drug on. Here's the problem facing my client. It's tourist season. There are too many cars and trucks and people on the road to be moving these structures until after tourist season. So we talked. The last conversation we just had in the mayor's office. I'm thinking tourist season. Okay, tourist season ends when school starts. So let's say September 1, September 15. Okay, now you can start moving. Here's the other problem. Number one, and we all know this, labor. Number two, Mr. Morris tells us that my client doesn't need a permit from the city or the GLO to move buildings that are protected by the Dune Protection Act. He says this order trumps all that. Somebody in the building department told my client, you got to get a permit to move your buildings, even if you're doing it because the city told you to. So we've got time for permitting.
Is that correct, Hal? I mean,
Yes, it's correct.
I don't know.
Again, the GLO has the authority to make those decisions in the past. Once it's there, they're going to want they're gonna want a permit to do any more traipsing around in their protected area.
In order to remove it, so we entered the order, but during the 91 days or whatever it is they're given, they could get that permit from GLO, and is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, typically that process takes,
I do have a question about the dune protection. Their land being in the dunes. And their land, what? Did anything they do have to be going through? Every single thing, because they are a business in the land and in the dunes, and they're not grandfathered for any kind of thing to do anything on their property?
if they're altering the vegetation, any dune contour, anything other than walking over the dunes to the beach, which is a specific exemption and called out in the Dune Protection Act, you can have a walkway to the beach. Anything else that impacts a critical dune requires either a no dune permit, which means there's no critical dunes being impacted, which is a permit process approved by both P&Z and council, or a full dune permit, which calculates how much impact, how it's going to be mitigated and compensated for. Also, P&Z and council approved process.
So that's for new structures and
So
new
that
construction
houses-
or an expansion. So if you're getting a roofing permit, you don't need a dune permit for that. If you're getting an
It's just putting
electrical,
extra buildings on.
it's putting new structures or expanding current.
If you're impacting any part of the vegetation or the dune,
So that the property has been cramped on and all changed, not just by the owner, but by people in general and life for however many years that structure's been there.
In what way?
It's just naturally
Walking on it?
yeah.
You don't need a permit for that. It's construction activity. So they got a dune permit for their pool.
They did get the permit for that. So it's just these little structures
Correct.
that they were just trying to house people temporarily.
or a shed, or a deck, anything,
Expansion.
anything that impacts, like I said,
So do all these
vegetation.
houses, I have a question, so all these houses behind them, those 3 houses or 3 or 4 houses that are there right now, those are on a dune also.
all got dune permits, probably $5,000-6,000
So
dune
anything you do,
permits.
which would be, let's say they want to put flowers in their yard or
No.
a tree.
No,
No. So typically, whenever a house comes in for a dune permit, they'll come in for a dune, like a construction area. So they'll say, this is gonna be our construction area for our house, our amenities, our landscaping. And so they mitigate for all that dune in that area. So anything that they do in that area.
That's been
forever after
approved.
That's been approved through all of these, through a regular dune
Processes.
permitting process, they're good to continue in that area. If they say, hey, well, we want to build a pool back here, they would have to come for another dune permit.
Okay,
And we do, I mean, we've done hundreds of these,
Yeah,
thousands probably.
so anything that's any of these structures that are dangerous because they're not up to code or whatever, those are just the ones that are being asked to be moved, is that
that's it.
just the ones that are too close to somebody else's?
So just the ones that were all illegally placed there without permits. Had they come to us for permits and dune permitting, they could have probably done some of the construction that they had. They didn't do any of
but
that.
none of what we observed would have been allowed for habitation. Because not that I disagree one bit with the housing issue we have here. But
I mean,
plenty of,
there's people living in trees.
but
on
plenty
the
of,
street,
plenty of
so,
our,
I mean-
plenty of our businesses,
Okay,
plenty of our businesses have secured proper housing for their employees.
Okay.
You
all
know,
right. Okay, so what we've heard from that discussion is you're probably gonna need some kind of permit, so that's permitting time. We would ask you to enter the order that Mr. Morris has talked to you about, that extends it to December the 31st. Mr. Morris has talked about, and Mr. Parsons has talked about filing in district court. We haven't said anything about that. But Mr. Parsons knows about filing a lawsuit over Board of Adjustment action. Mr. Parsons, when he had
Mr. Adams's job here. He sued this Board of Adjustment because they had given my client a variance. So we're in district court because Mr. Parsons sued his own Board of Adjustment. I don't, Mr. Morris doesn't seem to remember it.
I do.
Yeah, so we, in fact, the board, I talked to the board president, asked the city to provide them representation, and the city didn't do it. So I ended up de facto representing the Board of Adjustment. So in a way, I have represented this board in litigation. That throws it down the line. And that's what you don't want. So
Can we make a vote on
I think, and if I had time to read this, you
What is
mentioned
it?
December 31st, that's not in here,
I'll give
it?
them-
Yeah.
is it?
The agreed order that was hoped, our hope was that it would be agreed. Gave them until December 31.
What's
Okay.
page three right here?
No, that's not the order that they have it.
The other order is one that was done before there was this conversation that we thought might result in an agreement. That order gives them 90 days from the date the board
All right,
signs.
what have I got in front of me?
Let's
90
just
days.
90 days.
I've got
I
90
think you-
days.
Yeah, 90 days. That's the one that was first done before we had our conversations, when we thought there might be an agreement among the parties.
All right, where is it right now? Are we working with this agreement?
The first agreement,
That,
The
that,
90
this
The one
is-
that's my hand.
because there's no agreement.
this is the first. agreement.
They won't sign the agreed order.
90 days.
90 days.
So 90 days is what we're working.
90 days is what we're asking you to.
Okay, that would put
Okay.
us
I
in
think
June,
I've got it.
July,
Yeah,
August,
And you've got
September.
one motion on the floor, I think.
I
I
don't think we do.
Not yet.
You already voted on that, didn't you?
Yeah, we
The other one's done. But what we're voting on is right here in front of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Further, board within 90 days after the date of this order, that's the one we're talking about.
Yes.
All right, Valerie, can you
Okay.
find this? Start right here,
Right, yes,
okay?
good with that.
So this is the one. This is the motion we need,
I
right?
move with the 90.
Okay.
But deny there it is.
Right?
Is that the one, did you copy the order that I gave?
Yes,
you,
sir.
Rick?
Yes, sir. With one correction that needs to be on the record is that the one before you has because the original date was May 10th. That we weren't able to reach weren't able to bring the order. So the actual at the hearing in this cause will be June 7th. Will reflect June 7th rather than the May 10th.
If we sign this saying the night, we give them these 90 days. And they cannot get the permits to move buildings by September. Where do we go from here?
If that were the case, we'll bring the circumstances back to the board for
So
As we
can
do with
give them
the
90 days now to start the process, get it going. If you can't get them off the land because of some,
extenuating circumstance.
Well, it actually gives them 90 days to get the job done. By job, I mean removing or moving the buildings and structures off of the property and out of the city limits. So that means you would stop and conclude by then. But if you, I think what Rick is saying is that if they have not been able to conclude their work before the 90th day, then they can come back to the board and the board can extend that time.
This is what we did.
Correct.
You've done
You've
that.
done
at,
this
with the
several hundred
hurricane
times.
houses.
okay, because there may be extenuating circumstances, being that we are in a hurricane time. We are
That's
also, in the tourist season. And these are problems that arise for everyone just trying to get through a traffic light. So, I just want to make sure that they still have time. afterwards.
Just as Valerie pointed out, just as before, they'll bring it back if it's not completed. We'll lay out
This
why.
Right here is the motion.
From today,
It is an order which is 5
30 days from today's date.
90 days from
90,
the day
excuse
that
me.
you sign this order.
It's right here. Okay, let me look. I'm gonna have her read it into the.
Okay, or you want me to read it?
Motion.
All right, so this is.
I don't get for that.
Yep, 90 days there. You've got, and you look at page 4, that's the end of the document. Where the chairman and the rest of the members of the board would sign. If you go to page, if you go to page 5, you'll see something that says agreement to order. And that would be signed by the defendants if they agreed with it. If they don't, you just got a page 5 that's vacant.
Okay, all right.
And I don't think they're gonna sign this one. So, okay,
You don't think they're gonna sign it?
no, no, sir.
Okay. Yeah, no,
It's true.
I got a motion.
I'd rather Mallory read the motion.
Read the
There's
document.
more to it than just that. We still have to consider the fact that they want to grandfather structures and grant special exceptions. And that has to be included in that motion too, because it's included in their variance.
It's
Yeah.
included in this order.
If you agree
Is it
to,
in that order? Okay.
the order encapsulates a
Okay,
decision on all of those requests that were made in the variance.
So we're denying them any grandfather?
Well, grandfathering, yeah, they're trying to say that they want a variance. Because in part, they're grandfathered properties and structures, but they're not. They are
That's it.
structures.
Some.
No,
No,
I didn't read all of it.
none of them have permits.
you know,
So therefore
what-
they-
you know what
The
grandfathering
main structure is
means?
different. We're not
Okay.
talking about the
All
main.
these out
I understand.
buildings.
We're talking
Okay.
about out.
All right.
Grandfathering is something for properties which are, perhaps they were built before zoning.
Right.
Okay, and so how could they have possibly complied with a zoning law that did not then
Well,
exist?
But it's
it's
really
very- that's
confusing.
not covered.
Now, these are not, none of these were
None
ever
of this,
lawful.
none of this
So-
order has anything to do with their main
Structure.
normal
This-
building.
No,
Everything
just
else.
the things that
We
were
ready for a motion? Okay, all right.
Oh, now we are?
Well, I think we
Okay.
are.
All right.
I don't think that you're gonna read it.
Well, no,
This
she
is
told me
what I
that,
wanted.
she told me that my concerns are in that order. All right, I move that we deny the variance to grandfather the buildings and to deny a grant of special exception and to declare the structures unsafe and unsound and in order that they be moved within 90 days. Now, does that satisfy that?
Yes,
Okay. Because it includes the fact that they're not grandfathered, they're not special exceptions, and they gotta be moved
yes.
in 90 days.
Right,
Okay, or we're back here.
Mhm.
okay, all right. And we have a motion. We have a second.
A second.
Second, okay. Okay, the motion is to deny the variance. Ready? Everybody ready to vote?
Well, deny the variance and all other things contained within that order. Approve this order.
What does that mean?
And approve this order.
It means you guys are gonna
Okay.
sign this piece of paper,
And you're gonna.
and your motion is that you all agree with all of it.
That's what it means.
No, no,
Well,
no,
it's said that-
paraphrase what the order is what you're gonna sign.
Just need a second. for it to vote.
You can just say, motion to approve the order of the city of Port Aransas Board of Adjustment and Appeals concerning the matter at issue today as presented, and that's the document that's been presented to you.
You
The
wanna
order
read
giving them
it?
90 days. What do you need?
I
Don?
don't kind of like.
Me, I don't need anything.
I saw you shaking your head.
No, I just shake my head a lot because it seems to be the right thing to do.
Request.
Yes. But I think
Kinda
it is. All right,
This
we have a
is a
motion.
variance.
We have a second? Did we have a second?
We have a second, Paul.
Okay, all right,
You'll see.
all right. Okay,
Yeah, that's.
all those in favor of denying variance?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the variance. Variance is denied.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record,
Yes, sir.
I anticipate filing a lawsuit challenging this decision.
Okay. You need my address or what?
Yeah, exactly. I was here asking for your address, so I'll know where to serve you. Unless Mr. Morris.
We'll provide them. It'll
Okay,
be right here at City Hall.
okay. Will you provide me a conform copy of the order?
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
See you guys in court.
okay.
Have a good day.
Any further?
Any assistance with the dune permitting? Like I said, by all means, come in and talk. This will be.
Okay, Rick, are all the photographs attached to that?
Yes,
Are the photographs attached to that copy?
yes.
Okay.
We can, I can,
Job.
do
Be sure the initial. were
Job
made,
doesn't
changed.
pay
you want me to change it? Do
No, it doesn't.
Didn't understand.
you want me to just change it real quick?
Okay,
Change
Have them
what?
sign a clean copy?
all
of
right.
the date?
The date? No, just have initials.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
Sign anything today.
Yes.
You'll be gone for 10 days.
Yes. You need to initial the date.
Just initial the date change.
All right.
We're gonna sign it. Everybody will do something.
You bet.
You turn off all the things.
Bam.
I was talking to Lauren.
Oh.
Sorry.
I don't know how to turn them on.
Thank you, everybody. I know it's a difficult one.
I
Why you
don't know
got, why you get the big bucks?
I don't think so. Okay. All right, Rick. Here you go.
Thank you. Just